The room was silent, except for the click of his pen. Caleb Rourke, our COO, skimmed my resignation letter like it was a grocery receipt, smirking as he signed. "Good luck, Joan. The company runs fine without paperwork." His laughter echoed through HR's glass walls, the kind that burns into your spine. I said nothing, just picked up my badge and whispered, "Let's see if the system agrees." He didn't know the system had a memory, and my name was written all over it. Before I continue my story, tell me, have you ever been underestimated at work? Hit like and subscribe if you know that feeling. The laughter hit harder than the words. Caleb Rourke leaned back in his chair, arms crossed, watching me hold the resignation letter like it was a confession. "You're really doing this, Joan?" His voice dripped amusement. "After all these years of checking boxes and policing documents, you think this place can't run without you?" HR sat 2 seats away, pretending to type. I could see her reflection trembling in the glass wall, trying not to meet my eyes. Caleb signed the letter with a flourish, spun the pen once between his fingers, and smirked. "Don't take this personally. You're good at keeping things tidy, but this company runs on ideas, not compliance." The word compliance came out like dirt on his tongue. My pulse pounded in my ears. 11 years of late nights, error reports, quiet fixes, and code audits, all dismissed in one smirk. He pushed the paper across the desk, the ink still wet. "We'll deactivate your credentials by noon," he added. "No need to overcomplicate a clean exit." His tone made it sound like mercy. I wanted to speak, to tell him how fragile his perfect reports really were. But instead, I stood, gathered my notebook, and looked him in the eye. "You might want to reread Section 8 of the Data Integrity Charter," I said softly. His eyebrows rose, confused, but still amused. "That's the part you never cared about," I continued, "the one that decides who's really in control when things start to break." I wasn't a headline name in the company. I wasn't the one in glossy interviews or quarterly memos. But every figure, every audit, every investor document that passed through Averin Analytics had my fingerprints buried somewhere in the metadata. My title was Senior Compliance Systems Architect, unimpressive to most, but the system I built was the only reason this company passed federal certification year after year. They called it the Data Certification Framework. I called it insurance against arrogance. It had started small as a way to automate error tracking during audits, but over the years, it became the backbone of every report we sent out, every form, every number, every approval tag tied back to a validation chain only I could authorize. I didn't build it for control. I built it because people like Caleb Rourke believed governance was optional, that credibility could be faked with enough confidence and clean formatting. He had charm, power, and a talent for dressing recklessness as leadership. When the board saw his results, they applauded. When they saw my risk reports, they sighed. I learned to speak less and document more. People underestimate quiet work because it doesn't announce itself. I preferred it that way. While others chased recognition, I built proof, versions, timestamps, logs, and the subtle framework that made truth verifiable. My team respected that. They saw the precision, the way I could trace an audit trail through 6 subsystems in under an hour. But leadership saw a formality machine, a barrier between their ambition and their shortcuts. I started noticing their pattern: late-night edits to compliance drafts, unauthorized adjustments to client numbers, sudden requests to speed up certification. The kind of behavior that shredded reputations in hearings, but looked harmless in an email chain. I fixed what I could quietly, documenting the rest. There were moments when I almost walked away before. When Caleb joked in meetings that compliance people invent problems to stay employed, or when HR downplayed the hours I spent keeping certification scripts from collapsing under untested patches. But something kept me there. The stubborn belief that systems built on truth could outlast the ones built on ego. I was meticulous because I had to be. When someone breaks the rules, the first thing they destroy is the evidence. So I made evidence indestructible. The framework didn't just flag errors. It wrote its own record of them, sealed under my credentials, untouchable unless you knew exactly where to look. It wasn't a trap. It was a mirror, waiting for someone like Caleb to look too long into it. When he laughed during my resignation, I realized how completely he'd forgotten where his authority came from. Not from strategy decks or investor calls, but from the signatures, validations, and certifications that made those numbers real. The foundation he mocked was the one thing holding him up, and soon, when that foundation checked his name and found nothing behind it, even his charm wouldn't be enough to save him. 2 weeks after I walked out, the first memo went out: new audit workflow under executive review. Caleb's name was stamped on the bottom. He'd merged both audit divisions, compliance verification, and data integrity into one department under a consultant named Vera. She was young, sharp, and dangerously willing to please. Her first act was to deactivate redundant authorization nodes, claiming it would streamline cross-validation. I didn't need to be there to know what that meant. They were ripping out safety rails they didn't understand. Internal chatter from my old team trickled through LinkedIn messages and after-hours texts. "They're moving fast, Joan. Rourke says the new system goes live Friday." They deleted the cross-check fields. The words didn't sting. They confirmed what I'd expected. Caleb wasn't just cutting corners. He was betting the company's credibility on pretending my framework was just another process anyone could override. The man couldn't code, couldn't audit, couldn't even read the regulatory fine print. But he knew how to charm an investor into believing in efficiency. He wanted the next quarter to look perfect, a clean report for the board meeting and press cycle. In his mind, compliance was decoration, not structure. He didn't realize decoration can't hold weight. By mid-month, I saw the first crack surface in a public data feed. Certification tags that normally verified each client's statement had begun flickering between active and pending, without command triggers. That meant the framework had been partially deactivated, half alive, half frozen. It was like watching someone pull the organs out of a machine and expect it to breathe. Caleb's executive summary to investors used words like minor recalibration and system modernization. But beneath that language, I could read panic. My old team had been stripped of admin rights, replaced by outsourced technicians who didn't understand the logic chain built into the validation script. Each node in the system wasn't just code. It was a handshake between verification authorities. If one side didn't respond with the right encrypted key, the system stalled. It wasn't sabotage. It was design. And now, the design was simply doing what it was meant to: protect data from unauthorized handling. My phone buzzed again late one night. A message from Marcy, the analyst who'd once trained under me. They can't finalize the Q2 report. Every time they try to close it, the macro asks for your credential hash. I stared at the message a long time, feeling neither pride nor vengeance, just inevitability. Caleb had built his entire leadership image around deadlines and deliverables. To him, credibility was something you could announce, not earn. Now the clock he worshipped was ticking toward exposure. By the end of the quarter, his polished confidence began to fray. He demanded all reports be pushed live by Friday at noon, no matter what. When the compliance console refused to register the closing signature, he called it in fury, shouting about obsolete protocols and redundant barriers. I imagined his face, the same arrogant smirk cracking as the system displayed the message he couldn't delete. Authorization chain incomplete. Certification owner, J. Keller. I didn't need revenge. I just needed to wait. The truth had already started writing itself into the logs, and it wasn't choosing his name. The alerts began quietly, like whispers under the system's hum. At first, it was just an internal notification sent to a handful of senior auditors. Invalid certificate authority. Review chain. Integrity. But by the second day, the messages multiplied, rippling through Averin's internal dashboards like a digital fever. The system was alive in the way only truth can be, silent, relentless, procedural. I hadn't sabotaged a thing. I'd simply built the framework to verify every report through a single principle. Accountability had to be traceable to a licensed authority. That authority was me. The data certification framework recognized my signature as the root node, not because I coded it that way out of ego, but because federal regulation required a licensed officer's key for validation. Caleb never noticed when I registered mine under my personal credential ID years ago, back when he barely understood how compliance connected to funding. Now, his streamlined reporting process had severed that chain, and the system was doing what it was designed to: reject fraud. The new consultant, Vieira, sent out frantic internal updates, calling it a technical malfunction. She didn't know the system was self-verifying. It didn't crash when something was wrong. It documented it, time-stamped it, and automatically sent a log copy to the oversight agency. I knew because the same alerts began appearing in my personal inbox, copies of my original framework's fallback reports, triggered by a signature mismatch. The first one hit at 7:42 a.m. Friday morning. Critical mismatch detected in certification sequence. External authorization required. The line underneath carried the one phrase Caleb could never explain to investors: root validation authority unavailable. That wasn't an error. It was a legal statement. Without my authorization, their entire portfolio of certified reports became unverified in the eyes of the auditors. I imagined Caleb's face when that realization dawned, probably mid-conference call, surrounded by department heads nodding as the error screens stacked up. He would try to override the warning, of course. Everyone like him always did, but each override attempt generated a secondary record, one I'd configured to auto-forward to the oversight committee. You couldn't brute force your way through integrity. You had to follow the sequence. That was the beauty of it. I received another alert by noon, this one marked Escalated Priority 1. My old system had invoked its final safeguard. Unauthorized bypass attempts detected. Incident report automatically transmitted. There it was. The quiet detonation I'd always known was inevitable. My signature wasn't revenge. It was insurance. 11 years of watching executives twist numbers and scrub timelines had taught me one thing. People like Caleb never feared accountability until it had a timestamp. And I'd built those timestamps to outlive my employment. By evening, internal emails leaked from Averin's network. Someone forwarded me a screenshot. Caleb's message to the entire department. Temporary reporting disruption due to framework reconfiguration. Situation under control. Under control. The words of every corner cutter moments before exposure. I smiled at the irony. The framework was reconfiguring itself, yes, but not for them. Every 90 minutes, it pinged its validation server for an updated license ID. When none was found, it defaulted to archive mode, locking active reports from external access. To any outsider, it looked like a system freeze. To anyone who understood it, it was a legal freeze, a compliance lockdown. And there was only one way to unlock it: the signature of the root authority. Mine. I closed my laptop that night and stared out the window at the city, lights flickering across mirrored towers. Somewhere across that skyline, Caleb was pacing, shouting, demanding fixes. But I didn't feel triumph, only quiet certainty. The system didn't need me to fight for it. It was already doing what I built it to do: protect the truth from the people who thought they could rewrite it. By Monday morning, the storm was public. I didn't need insider updates. The financial press had already picked up the story. Averin Analytics delays. Q2. Filing pending audit certification review. It was a headline Caleb couldn't spin. Investors were nervous, clients were furious, and the internal chat logs that followed read like a slow-motion collapse. Someone leaked the system screenshots, red alerts flashing across compliance dashboards, everyone stamped with the same immutable line: Authorization Revoked. J. Keller, certification owner. There it was, right on their screens. My name. The one Caleb had erased from every internal document now stared back from the wreckage he created. I could almost hear the panic echo through those glass halls. HR was probably dragging in technicians by the hour, trying to find a loophole that didn't exist. But there was no fix for arrogance. The board called an emergency session that same afternoon. Within minutes of the meeting starting, Caleb's voice filled the video feed, calm, rehearsed, desperate. "This is a technical oversight, not a governance failure," he said. The former architect failed to update transition protocols before departure. He made it sound like I'd forgotten something, like his disaster was my negligence. But the room around him stayed silent. Someone must have handed the board packet, complete with HR records and my signed resignation letter, time-stamped weeks before his streamlining. Then came the question that cut through his act. "Mr. Rourke, were you aware that all federal certifications are bound to the architect's licensed credentials?" I pictured him blinking, jaw tightening, buying time. "That's a procedural detail easily fixable," he said, the smile twitching at the corners. But the chairwoman's reply was the kind of precision I lived for. "Then why did you approve unlicensed submissions under your authority?" he stammered, searching for words, the charm gone. The meeting notes, later leaked, recorded the pause. 12 full seconds of silence. Then another voice, likely from legal. "The system flagged multiple override attempts logged under your ID. Each one reported to the Oversight Committee. Did you authorize those?" Caleb's denial came too late. The timestamp trail was irrefutable. Every false override was logged, dated, signed under his account. The same framework he dismissed as bureaucratic nonsense had documented his own misconduct. I didn't need to be there to watch it happen. The collapse unfolded through the system's logic, the only language truth ever needed. Within an hour, Averin's servers went into compliance lockdown. Certification access suspended. Client accounts frozen pending verification. The company that had prided itself on precision couldn't issue a single validated report. Caleb tried to rally, issuing a memo about temporary disruptions, but his authority was already hollow. Word spread fast. Key clients withdrawing contracts, external regulators initiating review, staff whispering about the coming audit. The same people who once rolled their eyes when I asked for more time on reviews were now combing my old documentation for answers. The truth wasn't buried anymore. It was bleeding through every log file and workflow. That evening, I received a call from an unknown number. I almost ignored it, but curiosity won. "Joan," the voice said, rough and brittle. "Caleb, we need to talk. They're blaming me for everything. If you could just—" I didn't let him finish. "They're not blaming you," I said quietly. "They're reading." He exhaled shakily as if realizing for the first time that the system wasn't punishing him, it was simply recording him. "You built this to destroy me," he muttered. I almost laughed. "No," I said. "I built it so no one could destroy the truth." I ended the call. He never called again. By the next morning, Averin's legal department had announced his suspension pending investigation. The company's statement to the press used words like procedural oversight and temporary leadership transition. Everyone knew what that meant. Caleb's career was over, his credibility gone. I closed the news tab and sat back in my chair, watching the city through my office window at Meridian Integrity Group. The same skyline that once felt like a cage now looked like open air. I didn't cheer. I didn't gloat. I just breathed, steady even. The fall wasn't mine anymore. It belonged to the system, and the system had finally learned how to defend itself. The Monday after Caleb's suspension, I started my first full week at Meridian Integrity Group. The difference was immediate. The silence here wasn't fear. It was focus. People worked because they believed in what they were building, not because someone was timing their deliverables. My new office overlooked the river, sunlight catching the corner of the glass desk where my new ID badge rested. Director of Data Governance. It felt like air returning to a room that had been sealed too long. My work now was clean, transparent, verifiable, the kind of foundation I'd always wanted to build without politics gnawing at it. We were designing a next-generation audit platform that verified every certificate against its own chain of custody in real time. No executive override, no hidden switch, no loopholes for charisma to crawl through. Every action left a trail, every claim a record. The first time I saw the prototype flag of falsified entry, I smiled. It reminded me of the old framework, but without the shadow of someone like Caleb hovering above it. Meridian's leadership didn't ask me to make the system faster. They asked me to make it unbreakable. That was new. Freedom, for me, didn't come from leaving Averin. It came from realizing I didn't have to fight anymore to make honesty functional. The industry now called what I did architectural integrity. It sounded technical, but it was just ethics with precision. Trade journals ran a short feature calling me the architect of incorruptible compliance. I didn't keep the article. I didn't need it. Recognition wasn't the point. Somewhere in a conference room across the city, Averin's board was probably still trying to untangle the knots Caleb left behind, searching for the single missing link that kept their systems frozen. I knew they'd eventually find it. My signature, preserved in code like a fingerprint on the truth. They'd learn what Caleb never did. That real control doesn't come from cutting corners. It comes from building something so solid that even when you leave, it keeps doing the right thing. I turned off my monitor, the reflection of my name tag faint in the dark screen. Director, yes, but more than that, finally visible. The article broke a week later. Averin Analytics faces extended audit suspension. Former COO under review. No quotes, no denials. Just a flat statement from regulators confirming what everyone already suspected. I read it once, then let the page fade behind my coffee steam. The city was just waking up outside, sunlight sliding across the glass towers that once felt like walls. My new office was quiet, the kind of quiet that didn't ache. On the corner of my desk sat a sealed envelope, forwarded from Averin's corporate address. I almost threw it away, but curiosity won. Caleb's handwriting, neat and rigid, stretched across the front. Inside, one line stopped me. I understand now that rules aren't the chains. They're the proof we ever stood for something. No apology, no plea, just the kind of clarity people only reach when there's nothing left to defend. I folded the letter once, slid it beneath a folder labeled Project Aletheia, the new system I was leading. It would track data lineage from source to submission, leaving No room for manipulation, no need for gatekeepers. I liked the name. In Greek, it meant truth revealed. As the server light blinked on, I caught my reflection in the glass and thought about how it all began, with a signature they dismissed as paperwork. That same signature had rewritten the ending. I didn't need to erase what happened. I only needed to outgrow it. Integrity wasn't revenge. It was continuity, the quiet kind that doesn't ask for attention, but never forgets. I took another sip of coffee, glanced at the headline one last time, and whispered to the empty room, "Integrity remembers." Then I turned off the lamp and let the city light fill the space. I used to believe that silence made you invisible, that the louder people in the room, the ones who spoke over you, rewrote your work, and collected the credit, were the ones who shaped the future. But I learned that real strength doesn't need volume. It needs evidence. When Caleb laughed as I walked out with my resignation letter, he wasn't mocking me. He was mocking the kind of integrity he'd never understand. And in that moment, I realized preparation is its own defense. I didn't fight him with anger or rumors. I fought him with structure, one that didn't depend on permission or power, only proof. Every version I saved, every timestamp, every certification chain was a quiet vote of confidence in the truth. When he tried to bend the system didn't bend back. It broke him, not because I wanted revenge, but because I had built something that could stand on its own. The lesson isn't just about compliance or corporate politics, it's about self-respect. In workplaces where noise often wins, documentation becomes your voice when people stop listening. In today's workplace, credit is fleeting, but records are forever. The people who prepare quietly outlast the ones who perform loudly. You should feel empowered, not bitter, because you don't have to shout to be heard when your work already carries your signature. Systems collapse under arrogance, but they reward patience, proof, and preparation. Build yours accordingly. How to get started today. Document your contributions in real time. Never rely on memory or email threads. Build internal systems with accountability built in. Don't depend on trust alone. Stay calm when others take shortcuts. Your consistency is your leverage. Keep your professional integrity portable. Make sure it follows you, not the company. If you've ever been underestimated, share this story. Comment below with your own quiet victory, and don't forget to subscribe, because sometimes the best revenge is simply being right, patiently.